Good morning. Guess what day it is? It is Friday the 13th of July. So I'm here to tell you that this is the day the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. It is a fabulous Friday. There is nothing to dread about Friday the 13th. There is nothing to fear about Friday the 13th. This is a blessed day. It is the day that the Lord hath made. So I'm here reading about David. So yesterday, remember when we talked yesterday, Uzzah had reached out and had touched the Ark of the Covenant when the oxen stumbled because David was bringing the Ark into his city. Uzzah reached out to steady it because he touched it. God killed him. And I don't know why. I've told you guys that I've read this 16 times, at least 16 times. That's not counting all the study time I've put in. But today, I finally got why. It had never stuck with me. I'd read it, and I've read this translation more times than I've read any other translation because when I'm up early in the morning, I like to read the New Living Translation. But until today, it hadn't stuck with me about why God's anger burned against Uzzah and why he killed him. And the answer is right here in 1 Chronicles chapter 15, verse 13. It couldn't be any more plain than this. Because you Levites did not carry the ark the first time, the anger of the Lord our God burst out against us. We failed to ask God how to move it properly. Two mistakes that was made. First of all, David didn't ask God how to move the ark. And second of all, the Levites were never designed to carry the ark. David knew which tribe was supposed to carry the ark, but he did it his way instead of doing it God's way. And the result is Uzzah died. So now, how does that apply to us today? First and foremost, if you read all the way through yesterday and today's reading, David stopped and asked for everything. God, do I do this? Well, what about this, God? Do I do this? Well, do I go into this war, Lord? If we go into this, Lord, will we win? Over and over in the readings in the last 2 days, we see where David paused whatever it was he was doing and he asked God. See, God wants to be involved in our everyday life. There is no detail too small for him to want to be involved in. To the point of me asking, Lord, how would you want me to dress today? Father, do I wear makeup today or do I not? What pleases you today, Lord? For me to be willing to submit to my Father to the point that I would not wear makeup if he doesn't want me to, or I would dress a certain way, pleases my Father, and it brings me life. When it pleases him, the result is it brings me life. What happens when I fail to ask him? Now, of course, moving the Ark of the Covenant of God was major. I mean, that would be like, okay, God, do you want me to move to China? I'm going to leave Oklahoma, sell everything I've got. I'm going to move to China. That is not a move I would make without consulting God and knowing that I have God's blessing for that. You understand? It was a huge thing. But whether it's a huge thing that could result in my death, because if I move to China and God doesn't want me in China, it could physically kill me. Whether or not it's a huge thing like that, or it's the small things like, okay, what color shoes do I wear today, Lord? People would say that's silly, but really, have you ever had your child come out and say, hey, Mom, do I tuck my belt in, or do I tuck my shirt in with my belt, or do I not wear a belt today? You ever had one of your sons come out and ask you that? And did you go, I don't have time for that. Don't ask me those things. No, you care about whether or not your son is dressed properly in the way you want him to dress or not. What makes us think God doesn't care how we dress? It's relationship. It's relationship. See, that's the difference. It's not about religion. It's not, oh, well, you tuck your shirt in because all little boys have to tuck their shirt in. That's religion. It's no. What's appropriate? What's comfortable? What is because we're in relationship. What's appropriate for the time and the place that we're going to. It may or not be the same as it is going to another place. So we ask God, we seek God. If David had done that, Uzzah would not have died. So for us, it's not a physical death that we fear. It is the spiritual death of just not having God's hand on what we do. When I pray and I ask and I hear and I obey, I can rest assured by faith that I've got God's hand on it. Now, what do we do when we don't hear? Well, I may ask, Lord, what color shoes do you want me to wear today? And I don't hear a booming voice that says, wear the brown ones. Well, what do I do then? Well, I have to trust the fact by faith that I know what God's heart is when I reach down and I pick up the blue shoes. That's the way it works. He directs our paths. He numbers our steps. God is guiding us. We have the mind of Christ. When we take the time to ask, by faith, we can rest assured that He's guiding us. And that's how to live a powerful, life-filled life, not a dead life. So, and then I know I don't think, Lord, do I really read the whole book of Romans to him, or do I just read? I read yesterday's to him. Do I want to read? I want to read today's to you. So I'm not making light of that. I really am sincere. If God wanted me to read the whole book of Romans to you, I would. I most of the time tell y'all I'm not here to read these to you because I want you reading them for yourself. But when there's points to be made and emphasis to be made, like yesterday, like today, then sometimes I do read to you. Not because you can't read, it's just that the words, there's life in these words, and I want these words to sink in. So Romans chapter 1, verse 18. But God shows His anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Now this is a new covenant statement written by Paul after the death, resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is not a free-for-all because we have grace. It is not a free-for-all because all of our sins have been paid for. Let me read it to you again. But God shows His anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. They know the truth about God because He has made it obvious to them. They know the truth about God because He has made it obvious to them. I put over in the column, verse 19, God has made Himself known to all men. These statements here is the reason why I know that God has made Himself known to all men. It's not that I have to go to the ends of the earth and preach to all nations, because otherwise they won't know the truth. He has revealed Himself to all. And then He leaves it up to us what we do with that revelation. They know the truth about God because He has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God. If I never go outside of these four walls to preach the good news of Jesus Christ, every person alive knows about God. They can deny it all they want to, but it doesn't change truth. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship Him as God or even give Him thanks. Now, isn't it interesting that giving thanks is mentioned here? I read on Facebook, I think it was this morning, early, somebody said, what if all we had today is what we gave thanks for yesterday? How long would your list be? Pierced my heart. And here we are talking about those that choose not to believe in God. And the way He knows they don't believe is because they don't worship Him as God and because they don't give thanks. Do you know your lack of the ability to give thanks shows your ungodliness? My lack of ability to give thanks shows my ungodliness. He's no respecter of persons. And they begin to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. And they begin to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. So we wonder where that thought came from, or where that saying came from, or where did you get that idea about God? For instance, mine was a biggie. I believed God was mad at me for over 15 years of my adult life because of sins I committed, because I knew better. I thought God was mad at me. That is people making up foolish ideas of what God is like. God was never mad at me. He was never surprised by the sin decisions I made. He was never mad at me. We make up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds become dark and confused. Listen to this. Let this sink in. Claiming to be wise, they instead become utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's bodies. They traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. That is why God abandoned them to their shameful desires. See, if and when the temptation for shameful desires comes, if we continue down that path long enough, God will abandon us to those desires. He'll just leave us to die in them, because that's what will happen is we die in them. Even the women turned against the natural way to have sex and instead indulged in sex with each other. And the men, instead of having normal sexual relations with women, burned with lust for each other. Men did shameful things with other men, and as a result of this sin, they suffered within themselves. They suffered within themselves the penalty they deserved. Since they thought it foolish to acknowledge God, he abandoned them to their foolish thinking and let them do things that should never be done. Their lives became full of every kind of wickedness: sin, greed, hate, envy, murder, quarreling, deception, malicious behavior, and gossip. Gossip. Isn't it interesting that gossip ranks as a higher sin than the immoral sexual relations that they partook in? Think gossip isn't bad? They are backstabbers, haters of God, insolent, proud, and boastful. They invent new ways of sinning, and they disobey their parents. They disobey their parents. How important is it for parents to stay in control of their children? Oh, read this chapter. Read this chapter. They disobeyed their parents. They refuse to understand, break their promises, are heartless, and have no mercy. They know God's justice requires that those who do these things deserve to die, yet they do them anyway. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. Worse yet, they encourage others to do them too. And then we go right to the Psalms. Psalms chapter 10, and I want to read verse 4. After reading that, verse 4 says, the wicked are too proud to seek God. The wicked are too proud to thank God. The wicked are too proud to seek God. The wicked are too proud to worship God. It just goes on and on. I wrote in the column there, wow. The wicked are too proud to seek God. Yet they succeed in everything they do. They do not see your punishment awaiting them. Woe be unto them. And in the Proverbs chapter 19, verse 6 to 7, many seek favors from a ruler. Everyone is the friend of a person who gives gifts. The relatives of the poor despise them. How much more will their friends avoid them? Though the poor plead with them, their friends are now gone. And we just completed day 194. We are well on our way to finishing this year. Congratulations.